Now this is supposed to work. Trying to get the Instagram going as usual. Welcome to F1000 for the Singapore Grand Prix, another Saturday afternoon edition for us. How you doing today, Mike?
Doing all right, man. I'm kind of well, I'm a little bit lost. You're gonna have to take me through a few of your leans, I think, because I need to feel something out. I have nothing that I like. I'm looking at the board right now, so I'm gonna rely on you. You were hot last week. You were looking at some really good things, so let's maybe
Okay.
lean on that again.
Well, that is tough because last week I started the show and said I felt great and I thought that I knew where our slip would end, and it ended very close to what I said it would. I don't have the same feelings today. There is a bet. I mean, there's one, and for I've been in the book for the past hour, so I've watched all the lines come out. I'll probably reference it a few times. I've seen a lot of the movement from where it opened to where it is right now, an hour later. I loved Group 2. I still kind of like Group 2. It opened with minus 120 for Oscar Piastri. It's minus 250 now, which right outside our window. But it's Oscar versus both Ferraris and Alonso. Oscar's fifth, Alonso's seventh. The Ferraris are ninth and 10th. If Carlos doesn't have to take anything new in his car, which I'm not sure. I mean, his car looked pretty banged up in the rear. I think there's a good chance he ends up having to take a new gearbox or new power unit elements and ends up at the back of the grid.
I wouldn't trust him to be where he is.
What do you think about that group? I mean, I love like Oscar's going to win this group.
Yeah, I'm interested in the bet because I again, like I said, I don't. Fernando Alonso could have the race of his life, but he just doesn't have the pace to even make up the two positions that he has on Piastri right now. Um, yeah, I don't really know outside of him having a shunt. I don't think there's really any risk that any of those cars get ahead of him. Like Leclerc's not going to get ahead of him. So at
Mm,
minus 250, it's probably still worth it. I would imagine that that's going to move to the threes at some point.
well, it opened at minus 120 an hour ago.
Yeah, that would have been great to jump on that.
Yeah, I thought about. I mean, I was in here. We don't do anything without each other for the bet slip, so I wasn't going to jump on it without you. But
No,
I
I
thought
get it.
about
Yeah.
it. I thought about it hard.
I
And
mean, it's
there's
still, yeah, it's still a very good bet even at minus 250.
and there's not a whole lot that I love without having this conversation first. So I wouldn't shy away from it for minus 250. I'm gonna put a star on it.
I think it needs to be started 100%. Was there anything else that you saw that moved in a way that you still want to consider looking at, or
There's two.
okay.
Let me just get this in here. Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso. Okay. Well, there's two. One's somewhat ancillary in the weeds because it's a lap one bet, but we're right back into switch a situation that's happened. How many polls
Yeah,
does Lando have? 9 polls with Max right there. Max is pissed off. He won't answer questions to the FIA anymore. They're making him do community service, but he said his car came alive for him today. He's
yeah,
right there in P2, and I'd like to look at him to lead lap one. Lando has never led lap one from pole. Is he? He probably gained positions last weekend in Baku off the first lap, but I think before that he was the only driver to not go forwards in lap one.
yeah. I think you're right.
I
And
have a
whatever,
little bit
going
of
going
data.
from 15 to 13, going from 15 to 13 is not anything to write home about in a car that was significantly faster than anybody down in the midfield, right? So
We could potentially get plus 250 on something that's happened every single other time they've been 1-2 on the grid.
can I? So I don't mind looking at it from that perspective. Can I potentially frame it maybe even as a flyer? Because I did see Max Verstappen to lead lap one and then win the race at minus 900. And like, is there a better
No,
place to make that bet than in Singapore?
no.
No, you
Max
don't
isn't
think
going
so?
to
You
win
think
this
he
race.
loses the lead?
There's an
Or
extra
if you get
DRS
in
zone.
the
We have to be careful. We can't rely on the fact that Singapore averages like 20 overtakes a race. They've added an extra DRS zone. They've
do you think that makes a
re-tarmacked.
difference?
They've
Yeah.
re-tarmacked a bunch of the corners. I do think it's going to make a difference. Well, we don't know if
Well,
it's going to.
I think the re-tarmacking of the corners plays more into Max's favor, to be completely honest. I mean, that was one of the biggest issues that they had was with
Yeah.
compliance and running the suspension really stiff. I think the only reason that he's been able to get the car up to P2 is because it's actually running a lot smoother around here than it has previously. So I would say that that probably favors him a little bit more. I don't know if you think that that extra DRS zone makes that big of a difference that Lando's going to be able to overtake him at some point.
I don't know if it's going to, but we know that the McLaren high downforce DRS wing is very powerful. And now they're giving them an extra opportunity. Dude, I don't want to I have no
Okay.
lean
No, that's
that
fine.
Max is winning this race. I think
No, that's fine.
Oscar
Okay,
could
yeah.
finish ahead of Max. And
Yeah,
he doesn't think he's going to
that's
win this
completely
race.
possible. No, I don't think he thinks he's going to. I'm just saying of all of the tracks on the calendar to get into P1. I mean, we've seen slower cars win the race. We saw Carlos Sainz do it last year. He was
I agree.
arguably, from a performance perspective, he was slower than the cars behind him. He ended up winning.
I agree with you. We don't know what an extra DRS is going to do to it.
Okay.
And
Hey,
and the
that's
McLaren's the
fine.
better
Yeah,
machine. But
yeah. Leading after the leading after lap. I mean, like you see that he's the favorite just based on how the book has laid it out, right? Like he has better odds. He has shorter odds to be leading than Lando does after lap one. So there's a little bit of an acknowledgement there of Lando's struggles, right?
no. Lando's minus 275 to
Oh,
lead lap
I thought
one.
it was. I literally was looking at him like it looked like it was plus 275. I'm like, that's the
No.
craziest thing of all time.
No,
Okay,
no,
that
no.
would be crazy. Okay, it's minus.
It
Never mind. That makes total sense.
to me it's crazy that it's minus 275.
It
He's
is.
never done it.
Yeah, yeah. That is kind of crazy.
Okay, so let me add a little bit to it. Just for the lap one though. Lando, where he struggled in qualifying was turn 1. That's where he kept losing time. So he's not great at turn 1. The Red Bull, what was this? Okay, yeah, it was close, but I saw a graphic for the best performance for turns 1 to 3, and the Red Bull had the best performances in turns 1 to 3 around a lap in qualifying. So I think he gets him on turn 1, holds it for lap 1. There's no DRS in lap 1, and he just does what he always does and leads lap 1. But I think Lando goes on to win the race still.
I I'm interested in it. Like I'm interested in a plus 250.
It's a tough spot, plus 250 to find how much value to put on it. It's not enough to just call it a $50 flyer.
No, but it's one of those things where if it doesn't happen, you kind of go, well, hey, it was a good shot. It's good enough value, right? Like I think it's high enough, it's long enough that it makes sense to take a shot on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the if it happened, you wouldn't be surprised. It seems almost like a 50-50 thing, which is weird to even say.
Yeah.
Like it looks like you're getting for even what we think is even odds, like 2.5 to 1, which I'm interested in. So okay, I would mark it down.
This opened at plus 350, which
Yeah,
was
just
crazy.
people are jumping. Yeah, people are jumping on it,
Okay,
which
I'm
makes
gonna put a
sense.
star on it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
like.
interested in that.
Also, if it doesn't hit and it's like the first time that Lando's ever done it, I don't know. I don't hate losing because of that.
No, no, I guess I
But at
can I
plus
can stomach that at the
250,
very least too. Like
that's what I mean. But the
yeah, I
value
do
to
like that.
win plus
I didn't
250.
realize that there was. I didn't realize that you the performance difference through the first 3 turns. I think is like kind of like a little bit of a kicker there, right? The fact that you've been able to pull that out of the bag, I think that's worth looking at for sure. Like you said, there's no DRS, so there's not the same opportunity to come back at him if he does make an overtake in turn 1. So I I'm listening. I think that Max is going to try to take the lead anyway, and he knows that Lando's vulnerable. And I think of all tracks too, like this is the one where he probably will do everything he can to get the lead because he thinks if he does get the lead, he may have a chance of winning, right?
Right.
So
And I say this
yeah.
sarcastically, but I do think he's a little pissed off overall this weekend. He's
Oh
just
no, I know. Yeah, that's fair.
they're gonna force him out of this sport. He's just gonna leave. He's gonna retire next year and say, "I'm done with this."
That could easily happen. I can see it happen.
Okay, the other one, and it's a minus 250. And it's a 2-car bet in Singapore. So maybe you just say,
God.
no, thank you right away.
I'm listening. I like where you've taken me so far. This is kind of like shades of Baku here, so I'm gonna listen to it. But it has to be a real.
It's
No,
the it's the both Mercs in the top 6. They start 3-4. I think
like
there's a
George
decent chance.
literally,
Like I think
like he
it's
literally
between
drove
then.
into a wall on the final lap. Do we want to be sweating that out? The guy drove into a
I don't
wall on the
know.
final lap of the race. Like I, it would be so hard for me to take that bet, man. I mean, like odds are that that'll happen. Like I don't think again, there's not going to be a ton of shuffling. I don't think with
What
the
I like
order.
a lot about this is the Ferraris are starting 9-10. So
I know, yeah.
it's such a far way for them to go
When
get the Mercs
I
in
think
3-4.
there's a chance that Carlos like you said has to take some sort of penalty for breaking Park Ferme and he's got to start at the back of the grid. I think that's completely possible. I also do think that it's it is possible that Leclerc does kind of insert himself into the conversation. Not necessarily that he's gonna like he might get into P6, he might get into P5, and Mercedes hangs in there. So I still think it's a good bet.
I mean, I think it's a very likely bet. It's just it's another minus 250.
Well, it's just
I wanted to
because
show
it's minus 250 with two cars, like that's just a oh man.
Leclerc is
Okay, I'm not
minus
saying no.
400
I'm not saying no.
on his
Okay, he's
own.
minus 400 for a top 650 because I think they're like he's going to take Hulkenberg's spot. I think their odds makers feel pretty confident that he's going to take that spot. I think you're probably getting the short end of the like just because it's Singapore and the rate of safety cars is what's 100% probability I think of a safety car. Like I think you're the positions paying bets I think are going to be stacked against the average better, right? Because they know that as soon as a car comes out of the race, you're inheriting positions. It's just it'd be difficult probably to make one of those bets.
So you think they make the odds shorter because they're just assuming that there's inherited
Yes,
positions at some point.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I that's where I think it's difficult to justify some of the odds that you see. Minus 250 for both the Mercedes. I mean, truthfully, again, is not that bad. It's probably longer than it should be. But okay, I'm honestly I'm not saying no. And then if we take the bet, then they're gonna smash into each other or something completely. But
Would you throw it a star on it right now, or just kind of keep it to the side?
just keep it to the side because I can't. That would have to be if we can't find a third bet that we like. I would be willing to consider that just because of the nature of the track. Like the likelihood of them holding position. Like I don't think that they're necessarily in race trim faster than Charles Leclerc, but and they're definitely not Piastri, but they have enough positions to play with, which is beneficial. It's a good bet, except for the fact that they either of them could come out of the race at any point. It's a I don't know. Yeah, I'm willing to consider it.
It's a 2-car bet in Singapore. That's what it comes down to.
It's just like it
That's the
seems like
risk.
if we end up taking a two car bet in Singapore and it goes wrong at minus 250,
You're going to be very
like
upset about that.
I'm gonna be kicking myself 100% for not saying no. I would
I hear
rather
you.
find something that we like way more. Okay.
Okay, there was one that another group where the favorite has switched since it opened.
Okay.
Group 3, Checo opened as the favorite here, and Hulkenberg is now the favorite. Hulk
So many
starts in
positions to play with,
6th.
right? Yeah. I
Checo
know.
starts in 13. Tough to get a read, but I just wanted to make mention that the favorite is swapped since it opened.
I
Does
mean, that
that
makes
mean
sense.
we're getting free value on Checo in a Red Bull and Hulk generally moves backwards in a Haas?
I mean, I actually don't. What do you think is Alex Albon a threat in that group? Like, could Albon be? Could he finish ahead of Checo ultimately in the end?
They're not looking very
Maybe.
favorably on Albon, and I think a big part of that, and I would have had this assumption, the Williams is typically great in a straight line. This is a high downforce, slow turn circuit. They
Yeah.
wouldn't
Well, it's a
typically be good here, but they've looked great kind of this
they
weekend
have.
for that midfield.
Well, and the only reason that they didn't make it into Q3, it looked like, is because they screwed up the tire prep for Albon, right? So I mean, similar to what happened to Leclerc,
Mm-hmm.
is a botched, tire warm up, tire prep kind of puts him out of position in some ways. So he's an interesting consideration, I think, in some ways too. Not that we would bet on him, but I don't know how you factor him in.
Well,
Checo's got to get around him.
there's another way that we could talk about Albon. It's interesting to me that you went to Albon and not Yuki. You're a big
Yuki's
Yuki guy. You're a
interesting.
big V carb guy.
Well, I'm not a big V carb guy.
I'd
I
say you're a
also think
huge
that this
one.
is
Are you wearing
I
jeans
could be.
today?
I'm a huge guy. I'm wearing AlphaTauri jeans. You kidding me? I never go anywhere with my ATs. You for sure.
No, it's
No, I
Hugo
think
Boss now.
is it Hugo Boss? I don't pay any attention to what these guys do. It's nonsense. I do. I said it kind of in Baku too. I mean, this is a track that also suits the V carb. I think in terms of the DNA of the car, and
Hmm.
you've got low speed corners, and it's a pretty good car for turning in that type of thing. And it's got some straight line speed, so it can defend a little bit. But
Yuki
so
starts
I'm
8th. Albon's 11. I almost want to assume Albon's going to be starting in the top 10.
yeah, I think that's fair too. Well, I saw Albon points was like even money. I
It
mean, like
was
maybe
even
we want to
money.
consider that. Yeah,
It was actually the first thing I wrote down. Now that's because it was one of the first things that came online.
yeah.
Still even money. It does make me feel different about it if he starts 10.
100% it does. Like inheriting the position is a big deal. And even that might not be enough if Checo comes through or whatever. Like that's obviously possible too.
Sainz is used 4 of all of his components. So if he needs to take something new, then that's penalties. It looked like the rear of his car was pretty banged up. Like, is that a gearbox at least?
It might just be worth doing. Like they might just make the precautionary change anyway now because of where he's starting. You know what I mean?
And you got
Like he's not
Mexico
in
coming
contention
up.
to he's not in contention for a podium. So you might like, if you're sitting on the line right now, you might take it anyway.
He might.
And if we're just trying to like be no play Nostradamus here, like that's probably the best bet to make. Like what bet benefits the most from Carlos Sainz starting at the back of the grid? Probably Albon moving into the points for even money, I would imagine, right? Unless there's something else that we think.
Even money's pretty good for Albon if he ends up
Even money
starting
is
in the
pretty good.
points. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. If he's not in the points, that was my point. Was
Yeah.
you went to Albon over Yuki in that group? Are you seeing Albon just beating Yuki anyways? And Alonso's
It's just,
there, and Hulkenberg's there, and I think those
yeah.
3 drivers are potentially ripe for the taking for an Alex Albon. And the only reservation there is we're at a slow speed circuit, which typically wouldn't have suited the Williams. But I don't know. The Williams is kind of
No, it's just
they're
yeah. I
performing
think
in
you have
that
to look at
midfield.
it. Yeah, I think you have to look at it a little bit differently. I think just like the inherent design changes to the car, it doesn't have those same. Like I get it actually performed. I think its performance at Monza and Baku. I people are probably automatically assuming that that's a result of it carrying over characteristics that we've seen under this rule set. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just actually a good, well-rounded car, and Albon is a good driver. That's what I think it is, and I think that Colapinto's performances are a reflection of the fact that it's just a good, well-rounded car.
Hmm.
He does. You don't have to be like a specialist at driving this particular machine on a type of track. Just you get it and you feel comfortable.
Is Colapinto diminishing how highly we thought of Alex in this Williams? He just steps in and he's right there. What
No,
is he, like a couple
no, I
tenths
don't know. I
behind
don't.
Alex?
Yeah,
A
I don't.
hundredth.
I don't think necessarily. No, he's still like. I mean, Albon's still. He could be good. Maybe Colapinto's a good driver. I don't know. He could be. He could be a really good driver. But it doesn't change that Albon's putting in some good performances. I think. And he like for him to get into the I don't know. I'm actually okay. I would be willing to a one stopper like do is there an issue with the tires being a problem? The fact that they resurfaced the track probably means that there's going to be a bit more life in the tires, just less abrasiveness to the track. That would be the only thing I would be worried about is that his tires fall off. It's got to be a one stopper based on the pit lane change, right? The limiter 60, right?
Yeah,
Instead of
I
80, I think.
guess.
Yeah.
The thing with that
It
though,
has to be a one stopper.
the thing with that though is if it needs to be a 2-stopper, everyone suffers the same pit loss. What you're
No, but I'm
saying
just
is
saying
compared to last year, if you ended up needing to go on 2-stop versus 1, now it's going to ruin your race because there's even more time loss. But if it ends
right.
up needing to be a 2-stop race, like everyone will 2-stop. It's the same across the board. You know what I
That's
mean?
not necessarily the case. No, I think that
What?
well, look what happened in Monza, right? It ended up being a two stop race for everybody, but Leclerc guy won the race because he made it a one
But
stopper.
that's
So
my
I think
point.
there's
Yeah, That's my
There's
point.
an
If
opportunity.
someone can stretch it here, it's going to be even better for them compared to previous years.
No, but I'm just saying, like he's not the guy who's going to do that though. Well, I shouldn't say that because
No,
he did
that
do that.
that is an Alex
Sorry, I
Albon
think
thing.
yeah. Wait, he did exactly that in Bonza. I take it back. Never mind. He
Albon,
did exactly that.
Ocon, Russell, and I guess we got to give Leclerc credit because he just did it. Those are the guys that would just
Say,
hop on one set of tires and then pit on the last lap.
I don't know if Colapinto being behind him like gives him a gunner like in some way. Like I don't know if he's going to be able to hold off like a Kevin Magnussen or not going to be able to hold off Checo. I don't think, but
Or is he going to be able to attack a Yuki or a Fernando and get by with Alex, and then that helps the
how
pit stops?
yeah,
I don't
I
think you
think
need that
part of the
though.
reason why this is even like again if this is at a different track, I think it's probably opening at minus 150 for him to be a position out. Yeah, I guess I'm the reason that they're if it's 20 overtakes is what they're thinking. They're probably considering that Albon's not going to get in. We're looking at it though as he's going to get like so Checo gets in.
Maybe.
I mean, obviously something can happen, right? I guess that's the other part of it is something can happen. Alex could easily be involved in it, but
Do you think
it
he
just seemed
needs to
interesting
get
at even
Yuki to
money.
be in the points?
Maybe,
It helps if Checo is going to join that fight.
maybe, right? The fact that he could maybe go through if like Sainz goes out or Sainz stays in, the Ferraris might be able to carry him to Yuki. Like I don't think a gap's going to open up or anything. Well,
Williams is even money against the V carb, so same payout. But the question is,
yeah,
does Alex can
better
Alex be
better
in
to
the
play the
points
positions.
behind Yuki? What's more likely? Or they're both out of the points, but he's ahead of Yuki.
Like the fact that it's even money probably makes the points bet a bit more appealing, right?
I don't know. You didn't you a couple minutes ago you said the points finishing positions specific place finishings might not make sense.
No. Just I was just saying that they're just baked in. They're baked in to be a bit shorter,
Right. Okay, right.
and I think the only reason that I'm thinking that Albon is an even money bet is because it's Singapore, and I think he would be minus money. I think they probably made it a little bit longer. Actually, maybe I take it back. Again, like if this is last week and he's 11, like usually there's one or two props outside of the top 10, like drivers starting outside the top 10 that are paying minus money, right?
Hmm.
Like the book is not giving you even odds, but we are getting even odds for the guy in P11. I guess like the thing that's tipping me toward it more is this potential that something happens to Carlos Sainz. Like, because I do agree with that. I think there's a risk that he doesn't either his car isn't ready to go and he does need to take components, or they look at it and say we might as well make this change now.
I think that's the more we talk about that because Mexico's on what 2 races away, and with the altitude
Yeah.
there, they're probably gonna want a new engine for the
Well, he's
finishing
gonna have to
stretch.
do it at some point. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he's gonna have to do this at some point. This is being out essentially in Q3, like being out in Q2 pretty well, actually, really
Or
starting in P10.
do you wait for a race where the Mercedes are out, and this weekend's more about mitigating damage against the Mercs? Let's not move too far away from the Albon discussion. Let me frame it this way to you. Let's say Sainz is in P10. Checo now joins that fight from 13.
Yeah.
And what if it's Albon and Yuki battling for what would that be? 11th, 10th or 11th? Like would you rather just be on the like Albon versus Yuki?
Yeah, mate, that's also a fair point.
If I didn't say that very well.
It's
Let
also a
me
fair
try
point.
again.
No, I get it because you also
Sign
get
stays in the
Colapinto
top
too.
10. Checo potentially
Yeah,
joins the top 10. All of a sudden,
yeah.
that top 10 position, there's not a whole lot of room in there.
No, I get that.
And I feel
Yeah,
way
there's
more
there.
likely that Hulk and Alonso kind of just finish this race 8 and 9. And we could talk about a matchup between them. Like Haas and Aston Martin are right up at the top, but I'm not sure I have a lean on that.
Again, I guess like the value of not having the point scoring positions and just take it as a straight match bet is again you have two shots because the Williams are starting beside each other. once those faster cars move, either you're right, either the faster cars move out of the way and it's Yuki versus the Williams almost immediately,
Hmm.
which is great, or Science moves to the back and they just inherit positions. They get one position closer before the race begins.
Let me also add, I think I want to be on the team match because you've
Okay, no,
also
I
got
agree. No,
Colapinto
no,
right
you're
there, and
convincing me.
Ricardo's
You know, yeah, you're
Ricardo's
convincing me.
out of
Yeah, you're
it. They're
convincing
saying
me.
this is his
It's actually
last time
pretty
in the
good.
car.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good bet. Again, I think the only reason that it's probably baked into the grid position difference between them, like going from 8 to 11. But I think the fact that the two Ferraris are the ones that are in between them, plus there's a chance that one of them goes to the back of the grid.
Hmm.
Okay, no, no, you've convinced me. That's actually probably a better bet.
I think it is. Okay, I'm gonna add it on the list. Do you have any leans that you want to throw out? I've been throwing them all out here. We might have to look
Yeah,
at taking some of these off at the end, but
the
that's a
one
good
I
problem
had
to have.
was the points finish one. Um, does it just like not that we need to get on this, but never mind. I was gonna say under
Never
five
mind,
seconds
lose it.
winning margin. Under 5 seconds is minus 125. It's just the chances again, if it's 100% safety car probability or just going to be virtual safety cars at some point, is it just inevitable that like my problem is Lando running in clean air at the front? Does he just build a big gap, or do you even need to? Like, do you just always manage and maintain? And it's always going to result in. I mean, you took this bet in Monaco thinking the same thing, and Leclerc ended up just like building a massive gap at the end because he had nursed his tires for so long. So I guess that's possible with the best car at the front. Do you go okay? Do you look at the other? Do you look at the other way, or is the risk of a safety car just too high to even make the bet?
Did you talk yourself out of that? Because I don't want to touch this category.
Yeah,
Robin,
no,
yes, we
don't worry
can
about
see
it.
this chat. We try to keep an eye on all the chats,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I gotta flip around.
The only other thing that I actually really liked was George to beat Lewis. So plus
I
one
thought that
fifty.
was interesting. There's a couple of different
Yeah.
ways to look at George.
Okay.
Um, let's go with yours, the team match bet or race match bet.
Yeah.
What is it?
I it's plus 150.
Plus 150.
Yeah. So I like a again, this is a street track, one that ramps up very quickly from a track evolution perspective. It seems like George is the guy in this teammate battle who finds a grip, and it could be like a second stint thing, and all of a sudden he starts flying, and Lewis kind of loses the balance of the car for whatever reason. But I can see that playing out again, and the fact that he's starting a position behind him, I think, is makes it reasonable. How many times have we seen George be like maybe he's behind Lewis in race pace, and then all of a sudden he starts pushing and he's getting ahead?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has something to do with those changing grip levels, and that Lewis is a little bit better. It seems like when the track is a little bit more green, and could be part of the reason why he was able to get ahead of George. But I think over the 50 or so laps when they're putting down that rubber and the track starts to ramp up quite a bit just because of the nature of the street track, I can see him for plus money. He's one position behind him. I think there's a chance that he gets in front.
I don't hate. I don't hate it. We got to be careful of biases, and I'm going to call you out on one because you've been very negative on Lewis all week leading into this. And I think we've got to keep our eyes open and realize that his detriment this year has been qualifying. He's been very open about it. He just
Yeah,
outqualified George. He's P3. The races usually come to Lewis. I think I don't disagree with you that when he's struggling through a weekend, he's not just going to randomly put it together on Sunday, but he's not struggling really this weekend. So I don't know.
you just not. It makes you just so you're not comfortable with it, which is fine. Like that's not
I'm
again.
way
It's
more
it's, it's following. It's following a narrative. You'd rather do the Albon bet, I guess. The Williams bet versus that.
well, I'd rather pick that, but I'd also I like both Mercs in the top six would be my. I think the Mercedes is supposed to do well here. They're now 3-4. I mean, we're not going to take a double podium bet, but that was crazy long odds earlier this week, and now they're starting 3-4. I'm not sure I want to pick between them. If we were going to pick between them, as more, maybe I'll reframe it as a flyer like you did. You could get George on the podium. It opened at plus 300. It's plus 275 now.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting too. I think I think Oscar's maybe a little bit too much of a risk though. Like, is that
Oscar
they?
podium last I checked was minus 138.
Yeah, like
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but
I
that's not a
just
bad bet though. Like
it's right there.
it's not a bad bet at all.
The George, if you wanted to go against Lewis, I'd rather take a longer line.
Just see if he just ends up on the podium. I mean, this Lando and Max going into turn one, like George could come out P2 or P1. You never know. That's actually not. It's not a horrible. It's not a horrible bet.
This might end up being a really long slip.
Oh, I don't think so. I think we can narrow it down.
I'm gonna put a star on this too.
Just
Just
I'd mark it
we
down.
might have to start
I'd mark it
narrowing.
down. I like for some reason I'm interested in that. Like usually we're if George was starting on the podium, we'd be like running the combo podium fades on him or whatever. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But
yeah.
he's P4 and all of a sudden we're like, yeah, he's gonna get on. You think like is it like even money for Max to finish essentially P2 like without Lando
Is it weird that my
or he could
concern
win?
there is both Mercs and the McLaren of
Like
Piastri?
kind of like I don't know if that's like is it too much for him to get by? Oscar's got to get by both the Mercedes and then Max, and I mean I guess it's possible, but possibly yeah maybe I don't know maybe it's just not worth it just because that is a risk. But is it a risk in Singapore? I guess that's the question. Like I think again, if it was any other track, then yeah maybe. But like
Max
if
top
Max
two at
does get the
minus
lead,
110.
yeah minus 110, even money for him just to essentially like win the race without Lando in it. Is it like, is there a chance that he just gets in the car tomorrow and you're like, oh, he's like complaining that he has no grip and he's like, oh, the car's shit. Like that could happen, I guess, too, right?
There's a huge chance of that.
There's a really high percentage chance that that happens. There's also, I feel like, the same chance that he gets Lando at the beginning and runs in first place for like 20 laps.
There could be, yeah. I don't think he makes 20, but yeah, there's a chance. I do think he's getting Lando in lap one.
No. That was the only other thing I had to lean on was, are we just missing a chance to exploit, you know, the best driver probably in a position where we think he actually might get the lap one lead, gain another position on the field, hold off Lando. Lando takes it back at some point, and then he's just holding up everybody behind him because it's difficult to overtake. And it's not like there's a massive, like, so Oscar, there's not a huge performance delta between Red Bull and McLaren. It doesn't look like at the very least. Certainly not the car in Oscar's hands. I do think that Oscar's probably going to be looking pretty quick tomorrow. Again, he seems to be one of those other drivers that as he'll find the grip, right? Especially as the track evolves. So I think that does make him a threat, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's an opportunity really to make a move, unless he's going to do something outlandish like he did in Baku, which is he could do that.
We've seen Oscar make a move,
I mean, he does make moves.
and
He's going to make a lot of moves though.
I do think there is a performance delta between the McLaren and the Red Bull.
I think so I'm not saying there's a performance delta for sure. I don't know if it's enough where at this particular track, I don't want to fall into this trap of thinking like there's going to be a ton of, so if it's a one stopper, like everybody you can protect against an undercut, it doesn't necessarily mean like there's going to be a lot of shuffling that happens, especially at the top. And it's not like anybody at the top is way out of position either. Like I don't think Oscar's way out of position in fifth in P5. That's where he landed. Lando just might have, he had like half a second on him in some of the practices.
Yes and no. It's a short lap. With all the slow speed corners, there's so much time that can be gained or lost in each corner. I don't. This isn't. Oh, like Lando's just the fastest driver. They're not in order of pace. I don't think by any means. It's just who hooked up their lap, who had the least mistakes. Lando still wasn't happy with his pole lap. Max made mistakes. They all made mistakes somewhere. But the McLaren is the fastest machine, and I think Oscar's proven that he's fast enough for us to consider him in the fastest machine. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he's not slower than George and Lewis this weekend. He topped the
No,
charts in Q2. It's
no,
just
he's
who
not
hooked up their
slower.
lap.
Yeah.
So I think
No,
it's
I know.
likely he comes through.
How is he doing that though? I guess is my point though.
I
Like,
think you're
how is
too
he?
hung up on the historic. We don't know. Maybe that
Like,
fourth
you really
DRS
think
zone is
it's you
crazy.
think it's gonna make it? You really think it's gonna make a big difference? Eh? Okay, that's a
It
fair.
might.
Then
That's a long
maybe we
straightaway
should be looking at other
section
things.
for
Yeah.
DRS. Like that's gonna
I
really
mean, that
help.
would it could make a massive difference. That's fair. We have no idea.
We have no idea.
Okay,
But
so then just then you shy away from it. That's fine. It makes me like the minus 250 on him even more, right?
I mean, that was the first thing that I fell in love with,
Yeah,
and I loved it.
well,
Minus one
I mean,
twenty.
it seems like it's a very good at minus 250. It's a very good bet still. Literally at minus 250, it's a good bet.
Right. McLaren
We might
fastest
have
lap.
two minus 250s. We might have two minus 250s and a plus 250 on the board. I actually don't even mind it.
We might have that.
I don't mind the Williams bet either. Like I don't mind that either.
I like the Williams bet.
What I like about okay, let me put it this way because it's kind of like taking the Monaco approach, which I really think we capitalized on.
Hmm.
Both of the minus 250s are track position bets immediately on a track that typically, like I know you're saying that there's a potential that it changes things, but typically we don't see a lot of shuffling in the order. There's obviously risk with safety car and all that, but same thing I guess exists in Monaco to some degree. So you've got 3 and 4 for the minus 250 top six Mercedes. Okay, if George runs into a wall, I'm going to kill myself. It is what it is. You've got Oscar with like track position on Alonso to begin with, and then significant track position on the Ferraris. I'm fine with that. Obviously, I think like we just talked about, he could get the Mercs, he could get Max at some point, and then maybe you just take that one flyer. So is there a way that we can make it even money? So if we hit the two minus 250s, then we just like get out of here unscathed, and it's all just writing on Max to pass Lando at the beginning
Just
to see
right
if
at
we
the
make a
start of the
profit.
race.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe we look at do something like that.
We could, yeah.
We just get like an all in approach. We just like a one lap approach to see if we win money.
And just forget the Williams.
Just forget the Williams.
And I don't think we need
Before
Russell
that's
on the
that
podium.
no, because neither of those. It's like if the approach is let's just take a shot on something that we think there's like a logical chance that it happens, and then the other bets are going to be just bets to sort of not lose money, which is a fine approach at Singapore, I think, because of the nature of the track. Then maybe that's what we look at.
I don't think we frame it that way enough. Like sometimes, if it's a mix-up grid, it's what can we put $500 on to get that? Make sure we get that $500 back because that's a huge swing in weekly
It is.
performance.
No,
Getting your bet
it's a big
back.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So then you don't think that Leclerc is presenting a risk to the Mercedes? Even well, I guess he doesn't. If he gets into the top six,
He can be
that's fine
there.
because there's positions. Yeah, there's positions available.
Let's make sure.
You need to have Haas or Aston Martin or something happen.
Yeah,
So
he's got.
I'm okay with
Yeah.
they're gonna George Russell will be out in like turn one. Whatever, it is what it is.
The only flyer that you've kind of talked me into thinking about, and it's just been at the top of the page the whole time, is if you are big on, okay, Max gets Lando lap one and then holds it somehow, like at plus 400 for Max to win a Grand Prix, but he's never won in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's the race everyone
Like
would have circled. That's a bogey track for Red Bull at the start of the year.
if we're the approaches that we're going to take those two minus 250 bets, I would just take the plus 250 bet.
For him to
Because
lead lap one.
the worst thing ever would be he actually leads lap one, and we're like, oh my god, and then like 25 laps in, he loses the lead, like you said,
I agree
and Lando
completely.
comes back at him. It would be horrible to lose that bet that way,
I
and
agree
we would
completely.
also be like, yeah, we kind of thought that was going to happen because you do you've been saying that you don't have any faith that he's going to win the race, which is fair.
No, Lando's going to win this race.
Okay, so you think
Okay.
Lando's going to win, but you just don't think he's going to be leading after lap one, which is also a fair approach. I mean, like again, if he I don't have a gut feeling. I don't have a gut feeling on that. Like I feel like there's been points in the past where going into Lando's got the pole, and I'm like, oh, he won't be leading after lap one. I don't feel that way. Like he could eat, but I like the logic behind the bet that it is Max, that he is pissed off, that it seems like they've made some setup changes in the car's a little bit easier to drive for him, that they've resurfaced the corners, that he was better through turns 1 to 3. Like all of that
That's the
seems to make
biggest
sense to
one.
me. He could just,
He
yeah,
is the best performance in turns 1 through 3. That's where he's going to get it done. Should we be looking at Lando to win at -175? We typically never take race winners because it's all on one guy. Anything can go wrong to anybody. But is that like we're about to take a -250 for Oscar? Is this just like Lando's going to win this race?
it's actually a very good point. Like the craziest thing is I like somehow he would screw that bet up for us.
I feel
Do
way
you
better
not?
about the Oscar beating the Ferraris.
I do. I feel better about that than Lando winning the race, which again probably doesn't make that. Well, no, it probably makes sense. It probably makes sense just because of the track position that Oscar has. I think no, I'm better. I'm more comfortable with that bet. I mean, Lando is in the lead, so you just take the guy to win who's in the lead. We are looking at a bet though where Max is ahead of him after lap 1. So that scenario that I'm talking about, where Max takes the lead and then never relinquishes it, it's possible.
Yeah.
We're not going to do both. We're not going to take Max to the lead after lap 1 and then take Lando to win the race. So that doesn't make any sense.
No.
Those are kind of counterintuitive, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. It'd be crazy to snipe both. But also, Mike, I mean, the stats
Yeah.
that I'm looking at from 2017, the old Singapore with only 3 DRS zones and the old corners and all that jazz, it still wasn't the worst. Like, Jeddah had less
No.
overtakes. Australia had less overtakes.
Oh, I know, I know.
This
It's
isn't
a bit,
Monaco.
it's a bit overblown. Yeah.
It's just difficult to pass. And a lot of times there's rain that comes randomly, and that makes it even more difficult because everyone, there's too much spray, and you just got to make sure you're getting the car back to the pits. Okay. George is off. We're off the Williams. Like, I think there's a lot to justify it for even money. But I don't know. We don't really need it with this approach.
No. I don't mind the approach. Like I think it might be the right approach.
Is there a place for the Williams to stay in here?
I don't know if I want to be.
Like, how much do we have to put on the Merc and Piastri for it to be worth it?
Well, maybe we'll take a look at that. Let's see what we're dealing with here. Let's do
Like, you
15.
could go 350 on both of them. That's going to pay out what, like 150 or something like that, 130 something.
Yeah. I don't think we want to have. We probably want to make them probably like 400s at least, and it ends up being. Oh, you're suggesting if you have
If we
Albon
found a
in there.
way to keep the Albon and that had like 200 on it, so you're getting 200 back, you're winning 200. That's 400. That's 400 right there. That's a great return just to bank almost. You got
Again, I
100
guess the
on Max
only
to
problem
lead.
I have, not that this is like a reason not to take the bet, but like all the other bets, like, those other two bets are just again track position based bets.
Yep.
This one, Albon has to go get Sonoda. Not that I think it's the Ferraris are going to be out of the way. It'll be. I don't know, maybe it is wrong to not try to entertain this bet in some way because I do think the logic is sound. Signs might be out. It's not a points based bet. It's not a finishing position based bet. It's just you got to beat the car that I think that the Williams is better than. I think that Williams is faster than the V carb.
Is it
I
likely
think
enough
Albon's
to
out of position.
to have it in there? Maybe even just to cover Lando leading his first lap ever off pole.
Yeah. Okay. That's also an interesting way to look at it too. Then do we just take the Mercedes off the board? I'm thinking do we need to be on both Mercedes if we're talking ourselves into this Albon bet? Do we need to, the one bet I would say like let's get rid of the 2-car bet? Do we need to be on that? Do we feel comfortable enough?
We're not going to take
The Oscar
Mercedes versus
Piastri bet.
McLaren. I don't like
Like
Mercedes
I would
versus
rather.
Red Bull.
How about this? Okay, put it this way, chaps. If you're trying to talk yourself into finding space for the Albon bet, put $800 on Oscar Piastri to finish ahead of. I'd rather have all my money on one -250 bet on one car. You know what I mean? just the risk of one of those drivers coming. I don't think they're going to lose their positions if nothing happens, but it's just the risk that exists.
Is it a value to you, or the opposite, the fact that they're somewhat related to each other? If the Mercs are not both in the top six, it's very likely Oscar's up there and winning his group.
What is the, like,
And
what's
if
the
Oscar
risk?
doesn't win his group, that inherently kind of suggests that the Mercs are still up there. Nah, maybe they're not as
It
related
doesn't,
as I
does
thought
it
it was.
doesn't, it doesn't really, I would suggest, I think you're right. I think in one way, like the Mercs not being up there obviously gives Oscar positions, but we're not really worried about that though, are we? Like we're
No,
not I think we just, like we said, the performance delta between him and the Aston Martin is significant, and the Ferraris are just so far back that I don't think it's really going to make that big of a difference.
with a 50-50
Like,
chance
do
that
you
there's
think,
only
like,
one
is there,
Ferrari.
is it going to be like 3 laps in and all of a sudden Leclerc's behind Piastri and we're like sweating? Do you see that as being a risk?
Oh, that's almost likely.
I Right? I guess like that could happen. But then at the same on the same in the same breath, like Oscar could be ahead of the Mercedes at some point over those first 3 laps.
Right. That's kind of where I started thinking they were connected. Like Oscar could get one of the Mercs. Now that's just another car in the middle of his group between him and the Ferraris and Alonso. I don't know if I
Yeah,
love.
I think the Leclerc.
We haven't done well going like all in on one bet.
No, no,
Oscar
no,
loses a wing in the first lap, and then it's just like see
yeah,
you
no, no.
later.
Yeah,
I'd
so then we're
rather
just like,
have
okay,
some diversity.
hopefully nothing happens to both the Mercedes, and then you're just like, all right, well, hopefully nothing happens to both the Mercedes. Like, what I guess my point is, like, once you lose one of those minus 250 bets, like, it's kind of over anyway at that point. You know what I mean?
Not necessarily.
Do you have, like, you think you can
Not with
rescue it
both.
with another minus 250 bet, like a super short bet?
If Oscar loses a wing in the first lap and that screws our group bet, the Mercs are finishing in the top six. Who else is pulling them out of the top six? So as
Well,
long as
I don't think they're going to come out of the top six. The only reason they would not be in the top six is because something happens in Singapore,
right,
which of all the racetracks, like that's okay. That you
yeah,
go the entire
well,
race
yeah,
and George runs into a wall. Like that's kind of what happens here.
well that could happen for any bet. So I mean that's tough. That's
I
just
know, but then it just goes back to this. It's a 2 car bet on a street track. Okay, like I'm not
yeah.
suggesting that we don't. We can just have a four. We can have a 4 bet slip. Like let's see what it looks like. I guess I do. I like the Albon bet.
I mean we. Sorry, what pulled me so far away from that was the suggestion that we go 800 on Piastri.
No, sorry.
But
I
we
was
could
okay.
take the Merc
I was
out and
being
have
facetious.
you get a 500 on the Piastri bet.
Yeah, you could have
So if he
500 on the
wins his
Piastri bet.
group, you're getting 700 back. And then you've got Verstappen to lead lap one, and then it's like Alex Albon. He's got to go beat or Colo Pinto just has to go get Yuki.
Colapinto. And kind of like the same way that we're worried about the Ferrari all of a sudden being on Piastri's gearbox after lap 3. Like if they are, that means Albon is right behind Tsunoda.
Mm-hmm. Unless like Alonso gets between them or something. If Yuki has a great start, Yuki could lose a wing. Anyone could lose a wing.
Yeah, anybody could lose one, right? Yeah. I mean, it kind of seems like we're just landing on these 4 bets. Like again, which I don't have a problem with.
Okay. 400, 400. That's almost too much for those. You don't have enough left over.
No.
Or is it literally just 100 and 100 and you're taking Alex to only cover Max not leading? I think Max, that might be the most
Might not even.
likely
That's
thing we have
actually
on this
that
slip.
might no, but that actually might not be a bad idea though. That idea, like that Albon bet, just ends up being like you just get your money back from the max bet.
Like if
Maybe
Max
that's the way to
doesn't
do
lead
it.
lap one, then you're sitting there and being like, all right, Alex, just make sure that's a wash for us. Let's win our 2 big ones and we move on. And if Max hits, then that's a $350 back to us. That helps.
Maybe that is the best way to do it.
Are we going to look back and say, Alex, at even money, we should have had more on that? Probably. Having my 2 minus 250s, that's going to eat up
Like it just
a lot of the value.
they just happen to They just happen to both be on the board.
Mm-hmm.
This is okay. I'm not okay. I'm not trying to jinx us or talk anything. We went into last week and you were like minus 250 on Ferrari is a great bet.
Yeah.
And the reason that that bet didn't win is because Carlos Sainz drove to the wall.
Right at the end.
And like that was a two-car bet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like on a street track, right? It was the same situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would just like it's not a bad bet because it is likely to happen. They're in position. All of those things, it all makes sense. It's just if something happens, we're gonna be like, why the fuck would we do that?
And the only two-car aspect of that is that it doubles your chance of who's it going to happen to. Because Piastri could crash into Carlo, into Checo right at the end, and that loses that bet. But it's just it doubles your chances. You got two guys that could happen to.
Yeah, right. Like I don't want to say that it's not the right thing to do because again, like yeah, obviously something can happen. It's obviously something can happen to Piastri, and it kind of makes sense in some ways to just have two bets that exist to try to like you said, we cover off Max with Albon, then you win those minus 250s and everything's fine. Or you're really hoping that Piastri wins that group.
You're just really we're worried that George just crashes into a wall again.
It could be, dude. It could be anything. Like it could be anything. It could be Lewis's fault. It could be not his fault, but something happens to him. It just happens with it happens with two cars, and it happens in Singapore, and it happens on street tracks.
I don't disagree with
it was
any
so
of that,
benign
man.
watching Carlos and Czech. They're just drifting into each other. Like, what are you guys doing? It's not even like they weren't even fighting.
And there's a lot of spots like that where there's a little kink in the road here. You're kind of talking me into taking it off. Not that it's you talking to me, but like we're kind of.
I don't even know. I just don't know if it adds. Does it add any? Like diversification is normally obviously an important thing to do, but does it add enough value to diversify in this particular scenario?
The biggest thing it does. The biggest thing it does for me is if Piastri's the one that loses the wing, it's so much more likely that the Mercs are staying in that top six. Because who else is going to go?
I'm going to go back. I'll go back to this point. I'll go back to my point in that is not the concern. Like the concern is not that they're not going to finish in the top six. It's that they're not going to finish the race.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I don't think that we're going. If we lose that bet, it's not because Lewis finishes in P7.
We're talking.
You know what I mean?
We're starting to talk in circles on it. Let's take it off.
Yeah. Okay.
And Alex is going to get more value. Everything else is going to get more value.
Yes. Okay, so Albon, points finish. Sorry. No, not points finish. What am I doing?
No, Albon.
There's a race match bet.
Yeah,
Williams.
the team match bet.
Williams at even money.
350.
It's the same bet. It's actually unreal. It's just both are even money. It's fantastic.
That's why we swapped to this, but we don't have to worry about that P10. There might not be room for both of them in the or either of them in the P10.
And then sorry, the last one is max to lead lap one.
Lead lap one. Leader after lap number is where I found it.
Leader after lap number. Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully that's still the same. That one, I mean, that one's just, it's happened every other single time Lando's been on pole. Plus, there's specific data from qualifying that's suggesting it's going to happen early.
We could be.
We didn't take it last time.
We could look really good, buddy. We could look.
That would have been great to have. What was it like? Plus 300 or something.
Yeah, we could look really good. We could look really good, or we could look
away.
Really dumb. But that's just like what happens, right? Like that's. We were. You know what? Though the last Max read was on Monza. That was a snipe. That was a big bet.
That was sharp.
Finishing outside of the points.
And people were calling me after the show, being like, "Really? We're going against Max?" I was like, hey, "It's sharp."
It was a sharp bet. So again, the logic is great. So okay, how are we doing this? We get a minus 250, an even money bet, and a plus 250.
$500, $350, $150. Is that too much on Verstappen?
It might be.
Do we want more than 500 on Piastri?
Really? I actually don't know how else we can do this. I think you're probably, is there a better way to do this? You see, okay, right away, maybe Max doesn't get it. So you've got Oscar in the Williams bet. I don't mind this actually, dude.
Yeah, what's that come down
Because
to? If Max doesn't do it right away, what are we cheering for then with 2 bets?
you still make $400 profit.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Probably the way to do it, right? And then Max doing it, and then something else happening ends up still being like $1,250 profit. So winning 2 bets is going to either we're making 250 minus the 100 that we've lost, or making 150.
What is it if we lose Oscar? Because that's the big, like, we don't get our money back.
If we lose Oscar but we win the other 2,
Yeah.
we're still like, so both the Williams bet and the Oscar bet return 700.
Profit.
You're just making double your money on the Williams bet, and you're just making 200 on the Oscar bet. So I think that's probably the right way to do it, right?
Wait, so we lose money with those 2?
No. We never lose money. If we win 2 bets, we never lose money.
Okay, sick. I'm in.
Yeah. Please bet. Williams
It's tough.
over,
I can't.
sorry, Oscar to win group.
I can't do the bets on my screen because it'll show you guys
Williams.
our account.
Yeah, Williams over Visa Cash. Okay.
While Mike puts those in, I always like to say thank you for joining us. We've had a few people Saturday afternoon, not our usual time. So thank you very much for joining in. If you'd like to follow us along, we have a lot of people ask how we bet, where we bet. Today we're using Bet365, I will tell you. But you can always go to our partner, signupexpert.com. Mike, we got to make a sticker. Let's remind ourselves so that I can throw up on the screen so people can see the link. But it's sign, signupexpert.com/F1000. We have our favorite sports books ranked there. And if you're looking to sign up, if you don't have an account yet, a lot of the sports books, depending on where you are, offer, free $25. They'll match a free deposit, the first deposit. They're all different. Signupexpert.com/F1000 will make sure that you capitalize on every offering that's out there for you, for each sports book and whichever one you want to join. And it really helps us out if you go check that out for us. That's the spiel. The Ace on Instagram. What about Hamilton top 2 finish? Hamilton top 2. It's coming in late in the show. We've decided on our bets. Plus 187.
I don't know. I don't mind it. Like, I mean,
I don't mind it.
I don't think.
I don't love the value. I would have loved it at like plus 350 or something.
I mean, like, I don't see, unless Lando and Max run into each other in the turn 1 incident. Like, I don't really know. I would be worried again about George getting Lewis. I came in. I think that George is going to finish ahead of Lewis, so I don't think Lewis is finishing P1 or P2.
We looked at George on the podium, and I still think Max is up there. Like, let's not. He's struggling. Yeah. He's pissed. He can't swear anymore. It's still Max Verstappen. It's still a Red Bull.
Red Bull still looked. It actually looked bad. It looked better than the Mercedes. It's looked better than Mercedes all weekend. So I don't see a reason why Lewis would finish ahead of him, unless something happens between him and Lando. Like, Lewis, I think, is just kind of locked out of the top 2 just based on performance, unfortunately. And I think George has a chance to get him. So I don't know.
I agree with you. Danny Allen, if you're still here, I didn't see this earlier, so that's my fault. My apologies. Safety car, we talked a lot about the safety car. 100% hit rate here, minus 550. We'd have to be F10,000 and put it
to make that
and
work.
Put it all on safety car.
Minus 550 is
crazy.
Insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Take Piastri out and go with the other 3 on TikTok. Oh, never mind. Okay, we're keeping it in.
Oh my God.
I think that's all I missed.
Okay.
That's gonna be the show for Singapore. Mike, it's another long break. It snuck up on me. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
It's like 3 weeks, a month off. And then get excited. You're gonna hear it when we come back. It's my favorite triple header. It's the best 3 tracks
you do love it.
in a row.
Yeah, you do love it.
Oh my God, it's so much fun. I can't wait. We'll be back mid-October